Hello, this is Stephen McNutt with Densemode.com. I've got my Always Be Labbing shirt on. So let's do a little bit of labbing today. What we're going to do is we're going to start working on putting together a PKI for our lab so we can do some fun things later. So this is a foundation infrastructure piece. It's going to take a little bit of time, so I'll probably have to break this up into several videos. I have a diagram up here so you could kind of get an idea of what I'm going after. So we're going to, at the end of this, have two different kinds of certification authorities. We're going to have a standard RSA certification authority, which is this guy over here. Let me see. Here we go. So this is going to be our standard issue RSA based certification authority. And we're going to have an elliptic curve certification authority, which is really neat. This new next gen encryption stuff, which is really cool. We can talk more about that later when it's actually time to set it up. And we're actually going to do this like in proper style. Normally, when you see people demo this stuff, they'll just throw everything onto one box. But in a real life implementation, you would never do that. Normally, what you do is you build an offline root, and that's what we have up here is our RSA root and our EC root, and that's how we're going to build this. We're going to build it somewhat similar to what you might do in a production network where you have an offline CA and then an issuing CA, and then finally we have this last guy down here called PKI, and he's going to do a couple of things for us. He's basically going to be where everybody comes to check the validity of certificates and also to validate the certificates of the root CA and the issuing CA. So he's gonna have a CRIL distribution point, and he's also going to be an online responder for us. So in a real world deployment, you would have like a load balancer and a bunch of these but uh, they would still run like on a VIP or virtual IP address. So this is pretty close to what you would get in a production environment. So today we are going to concentrate on just the RSA, this guy, and then the CA, the root, and then the issuing CA, and then finally the CRIL distribution point. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is get started on our root CA. So let's go ahead and grab him. And that's, I believe, this guy here. All right, so this is him. This is our root CA. So it's a Windows machine called RSA root, and then a work group, not joined to a domain, never will be joined to a domain. And one of the things that when you're setting up a CA, it's really something where you have, it gets relatively involved, and you really have to have all of your information ready before you get started. So that's what I've got here. Up here, these are some resources that I'll post in the blog article, but I used these, I leaned on these heavily for putting this together. Especially thank you to Timothy Gruber. His series on setting up PK on Windows 20 Server 2016 is fantastic. Can't recommend it highly enough. So we have some information. So for example, this is our CA policy.inf for issuing and our root CAs. We've got some information we're going to need to supply when we are configuring these guys. So we have some AIA and CDP information and just some stuff we're going to use certutil to quickly configure. You could do it by hand with regedit, but it's faster this way. And then the enterprise CA is just kind of a wash, rinse, and repeat of the root with some additional differences, but you'll see those as we go through it. So let's go ahead and start configuring this guy. It looks like the first thing we need to do is I prepared this super basic CA policy.inf. There's one thing in particular that you really want to change from the default. Well, there's a couple. First is the key length. We're using a 2048-bit keys. I think the default's something. It's like a 1024-bit key, a 1K-bit key, which you don't want. Another thing that I do that I think it's okay, and I'll explain why it's okay, and that's this guy, this krill period. What the krill is it's a certificate revocation list, and that specifies what certificates have been revoked in your PKI. And there's a period in the krill. It's stamped, and it basically says, okay, this is how long this krill is good for. And what will happen is if the krill expires, then for the root CA, the issuing CA won't issue any more certificates until you update the krill, and you've got to bring out your offline root, generate a new krill, blah blah blah. And in my opinion, with the offline root, you just set the krill to like 20 years so that you never have to update it, except in cases where you need to revoke the certificate of one of your issuing CAs. And in that case, then you would heat up your offline root VM, revoke the certificate, generate a new krill, and publish it, and you're good to go. That's, to me, I think that's good enough for most enterprises. So it's just like one little thing that I think is it's worth doing, and I don't really think it's that big of a deal from a security standpoint, because you're protecting the root, and you're still able to revoke the certificate of any compromised CAs, and so it's okay. And then so that's like kind of the important stuff in there. So let's go ahead and actually take this file, take this bit of text, and we're going to come over to our root CA, fire up a copy of Notepad. We're going to save this little chunk of text. We're going to save it in the Windows directory. And we're going to save it as ca policy.inf. So what will happen is the Windows will just read this file in when we're running setting it up, which we're about to do. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to add roles and features, select the server, roles, Active Directory, certificate services. Okay, we're cool there. And keep going. Next a bunch. And the only thing we're installing is certification authority. And we'll click install. And we'll just let this bake for a second. Okay, so we've had a successful installation, and we're going to move on with the configuration of the CA. So we've got the installation succeeded. So we're going to come up here, select Configure Active Directory Certificate Services, and then we get this handy little wizard. Just didn't mean to launch that. So click Next. We're going to configure the certification authority. That's our only option because it's not a domain joined machine. So we're going to be a standalone. And we're going to be a root. And new private key. So this all looks good. We're going to upgrade our hash to SHA-384. And that looks pretty good. Let's check and see what I planned for. We're going to call this guy. No, we're going to call him Densemode RSA root. Okay. this guy. Let's see here. Let's call him this. Actually, let's move this. So we'll take that. Come back over here. And we don't really need to give it a suffix. Okay, looks pretty good. Certificate generator for the certification authority. Okay, let's do 20 years. Alright, so now we've got the basics done. So we'll go to Tools and Certification Authority. And we're going to change a couple things here. So first, we're going to go to Extensions, and we're going to rip out all the defaults. So remove, so this is the CDP extension. We're going to go ahead and just take all this out. Bye-bye. And we're going to come down to the stuff that we've prepared ahead of time. So this is our first one. So this is the information for the certificate revocation list. So we're going to put this in first. Let's throw that in. And these %8, %9s, those are variables, and you can find out what those are over here in this guide, which I'm going to post a link to, but it's way down here. It's this table right here, tells you what these are for. So we'll put those. So we'll put that in there. And yes, we're going to publish krills to this location. We're not going to publish delta krills. And then we're going to add one more item. Nope, that's the wrong one. We want this one. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, that's the wrong one. If there's one thing that might become obvious by now, with all the little details you have to deal with, you really want to have all these bits and pieces sorted out before you start configuring. Like what we're doing here. Let's see. So the first thing is the first krill distribution point is actually just the file system on the server. And then the second one is one that we're actually going to embed in any certificates that are issued. And that's what this one is here. So we're going to put in here, include the CDP extension of issued certificates. So this is where clients are going to go to try and find the certificate revocation list. It'll be embedded in any certificates. So when we create CA certificates from this guy, they'll go to this location clients will go to this location to make sure that the certificate for the certification authority, the issuing certification authority, hasn't been revoked. And then we're going to also edit this other extension called Authority Information Access, or AIA. So we're going to remove all the defaults. Bye-bye. Just going to rip it all out. And we're going to go ahead and add our own that we sat down and worked out. So the first one is we're going to use an online responder. So that's what this is here, OCSP, Online Certificate Status Protocol. This is a little bit more efficient and scalable Then the CRILs, because the CRIL is like a file that the client has to download and store, where the OCSP allows the client to just, instead of downloading the file, it can just send an HTTP request and just say, hey, is this certificate any good? And then the online responder will say yes or no. So it's really nice to have, and you want to put it as the first thing in here. And we're going to include it, and we're going to tell the client that this is an OCSP URL. And the second one, since it's not universally supported, you may get some clients that don't support OCSP. We're going to have a backup where we're going to actually tell the client where they can go to download a copy of the root certificate. So what this is for is certificate chaining. So if the issuing CA issues their certificate, and then the client tries to use that certificate, the part of the certificate validation for that finally issued certificate is, okay, we have to check and make sure that the root certificate is good. And so a machine will actually go and download. It needs to go and it'll look in the AIA field, and it'll try this if it supports OCSP. If it doesn't, then it just goes and downloads a copy of the certificate to look at it. So that's what that's for. So on this one, we're going to include it in the AIA extension so it gets embedded, but we're not going to check this. So let's double check everything. So this is here we're going to publish the CRIL, and then here is where we're going to actually tell clients where to go to access the CRIL. So that looks pretty good. And then we have our OCSP. So that way they can, instead of using this CRIL here, they support OCSP, they can use that. And then this is also where they can go to get the root certificate. So that all looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and click OK. Yeah, it's fine, whatever. And now we're going to add some additional settings that, rather than going and manually editing the registry by hand, it's a lot easier to just take this batch of cert util commands and run them. A little batch script here. So let's put this down, this in, and we're going to go ahead and run this now. And didn't run the last command. Okay, so in theory, we should have a functioning root certification authority that we can now use to issue a certificate for our actual issuing CA. So going back and referring to the diagram really quickly, we just worked on this guy right here. This guy right here. So the next step is we're going to copy the certificates and the CRL that was created over to this guy, because remember, this is where we configured those fields, those AIA and CDP fields, and we actually put in information that's referencing clients to this guy. And then we're also going to need to import that stuff into this guy over here before we begin the setup process. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. Come back to our root and go over here and go to pki.densemode.com/$. typoed it or something. So the location for the certificates when they're generated by a CA is always in the same place. It's in Windows, System 32, cert serve, certain role, and here they are. Oh, I just missed a step. So let's go back over here. One of the things we need to do is we actually have to publish the CRIL. So I'm going to right click on revoke certificates, all tasks, publish. Publish CRIL. So we don't want that old CRIL. That first CRIL is no good because it doesn't include any of the changes that we've made. So this is the CRIL that we want. This one that's with the state right here. So we're going to take these two things. We're going to copy them. And now we're going to send them over to first we're going to go to PKI right here. So this is our web server. This is the share on the web server. Just going to paste those in like that. Okay, looking good. And we can and I'll show you the configuration of the web server later. But so there's that. And now we need to go and put those files on our issuing CA as well. So what are we calling him? We're calling him RSA ca.densemode.com. That looks like a case of Windows Firewall. So let's fix that. Always something. Okay. Right. Let's turn off Windows Firewall for now. See if suddenly this magically starts working. Yep. And look at that. Of course. Paste those over there. Okay, so we are now done with the root. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here and do another video so this doesn't end up being like so long that it's unwatchable. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.